Hello, hello everybody. Hi, welcome. Hello. Uh, please let me know if the background noise is too loud. Hi Volpo. Hi Kevin. Hello to everybody else and welcome. So sorry for taking so long, but I had to go to the bathroom. Hello Matt. Yes, still no sus intentions. Never, and I never have sus intentions. What? Ganzo. Okay, so did you see the news about Overwatch? Since we're talking about Hanzo, I did. I don't know how to feel about them, I'll be honest. Mainly because free-to-play games come with a lot of cheaters usually, and even more dick people that are not nice at all. But that's okay. So the thing that worries me the most is like the battle pass and the fact that I might not get access to the beta. And I'll be honest with you right now, be completely honest. So there's like this sort of quote-unquote DLC, and basically it's like 40 euros, which is what is making me not convinced. And it's like you get 2 skins for Overwatch 2, you get 5 skins for the base game, which I don't really care about, but you know, you get a battle pass for Overwatch season, like the Overwatch 2 first battle pass, and you also get the access, guaranteed access to the beta. And I'll be honest, I don't want to spend 40 euros to play just a couple of months in advance, but I am extremely tempted, like very tempted, just because I love that game. And you know, getting to play it a little bit earlier, it's another bad. Sounds kinda good in my plans, but I also don't want to spend all that money. Like it's kinda useless. I mean, half of the skins I probably have them already, but that's okay. That's okay. So Kevin, welcome to the Discord server. Okay. The cat is on track? What do you mean? She's following my eyes. I read there very quickly, so like the eyes aren't the best. I might offer like mascot options like this one in the future. Wow. Okay. Right. So, what do you guys say about going to like the Mankers, aka the Lovecraft reading, because I guess that's what you've been waiting for. Am I correct? Let me get the book open for you guys. And we can continue the story, The Rats in the Walls. So as you know, we're talking the story is got to the point where like the protagonist got his family mansion back in the village where his family originated from, and he restored the mansion, the family mansion, and spooky stories about the mansion started to arise. And we were at the point of the first incidents, so I guess I can finally start the reading of the second part of The Rats in the Walls. On July 22 occurred the first incident which, though lightly dismissed at the time, takes on a preternatural significance in relation to later events. It was too simple as to be almost negligible, and could not possibly have been noticed under the circumstances, for it must be recalled, since I was in a building practically fresh and new except for the walls, and surrounded by a well-balanced staff of servitors, apprehension would have been absurd despite the locality. What I afterward remembered is merely this, that my old black cat, whose moods I know so well, was undoubtedly alert and anxious to an extent wholly out of keeping with his natural character. He roved from room to room, restless and disturbed, and sniffed constantly about the walls which formed part of the old Gothic structure. I realized how trite it sounds, like the inevitable dog in the ghost story, which always crawls before his master sees the sheeted figure, yet I cannot consistently suppress it. The following day, his servant complained of restlessness among all the cats in the house. He came to me in my study, a lofty west room on the second story, which groined arches, black oak paneling, and a triple Gothic window overlooking the limestone cliff and desolate valley. And even as he spoke, I saw the jetty form of the jetty form of my black cat creeping along this west wall and scratching at the new panels which overlaid the ancient stone. I told the man that there must be some singular odor or emanation from the old stonework, imperceptible to human senses, but affecting the delicate organs of cats even through the new woodwork. Beauty Mouse, welcome! How are you? Welcome to the stream. This I truly believed, and when the fellow suggested the presence of mice or rats, I mentioned that there has been no rats there for 300 years, and that even the field mice of the surrounding country could hardly be found in these high walls, where they had never been known to stray. That afternoon I called on Captain Norris, and he assured me that it would be quite incredible for field mice to infest the priory in such a sudden and unprecedented fashion. The night, dispensing as usual with a valet, I retired in the west tower chamber, which I had chosen as my own. Reached from the study by a stone staircase and short gallery, the former partly ancient, the latter entirely restored. This room was circular, very high, and without wainscoting, being hung with arras in which I had myself chosen in London. Seeing that my cat was with me, I shut the heavy Gothic door and retired by the light of the electric bulbs which so cleverly counterfeited candles, finally switching off the light and sinking on the carved and canopied four-poster, with a venerable cat in his accustomed place across my feet. I did not draw the curtains, but gazed out at the narrow north window which I faced. There was a suspicion of aurora in the sky, and the delicate traceries of the window were pleasantly silhouetted. Oh, Fortnite phone, good luck with your games then. At some time I must have fallen quietly asleep, for I recall a distinct sense of living strange dreams, when the cat started violently from his placid position. I saw him in the faint auroral glow, head strained forward, 4 feet on my ankles, and hind feet stretched behind. He was looking intensely at a point on the wall somewhat west of the window, a point which to my height had nothing to mark it, but a word which all my attention was now directed. And as I watched, I knew that my cat was not vainly excited. Whether the arras actually moved I cannot say. I think it did, very slightly. But what I can swear to is that behind it I heard a low, distinct scurrying as of rats or mice. In a moment, the cat had jumped bodily on the screening tapestry, bringing the affected section to the floor with his weight, and exposing a damp, ancient wall of stone, patched here and there by the restores and devoid of any trace of rodent prowlers. My cat raced up and down the floor by this part of the wall, clawing the wooden arras and seemingly trying at times to insert a paw between the wall and the oaken floor. He found nothing, and after a time returned wearily to his place across my feet. I had not moved, but I did not sleep again that night. In the morning, I questioned all the servants and found that none of them had noticed anything unusual, save that the cook remembered the actions of a cat which had rested on her window-sill. This cat had howled at some unknown hour of the night, awaking the cook in time for her to see him dart purposefully out of the open door down the stairs. I dressed away the noontime, and in the afternoon called again on Captain Norris, who became exceedingly interested in what I told him. The odd incidents, so light yet so curious, appealed to his sense of the picturesque and elicited from him a number of reminiscences of local ghostly lore. We were genuinely perplexed at the presence of rats, and Norris lent me some traps and Paris green, which I had the servants place in strategic localities when I returned. I retired early, being very sleepy, but was harassed by dreams of the most horrible sort. I seemed to be looking down from an immense height upon a twilight grotto, knee-deep with filth, where a white-bearded demon swineherd drove about with his staff a flock of fingers flappy beasts, whose appearance filled me with unutterable loathing. Then, as the swineherd paused and nodded over his task, a mighty swarm of rats rained down on the stinking abyss and fell to devouring beasts and men alike. From this terrific vision, I was abruptly awakened by the motions of my cat, who had been sleeping as usual across my feet. This time, I did not have to question the source of his snarls and hisses, and though the fear which made him sink his claw into my ankle, and conscious of their effect, for on every side of the chamber the walls were alive in nauseous sound, the verminous slithering of ravenous, gigantic rats. There was now no aurora to show the state of the arras, the fallen section of which had been replaced, but I was not too frightened to switch on the light. As the bulb leaped into radiance, I saw a hideous shaking all over the tapestry, causing the somewhat peculiar design to execute a singular dance of death. This motion disappeared almost at once, and the sound with it. Springing out of bed, I poked at the arras with the long handle of a warming pan, then rested near and lifted one section to see what lay beneath. There was nothing but a patched stone wall, and even the cat had lost its tense realization of abnormal presences. When I examined the circular trap that had been placed in the room, I found all of the openings sprung, though no trace remained of what had been cooked and had escaped. Let me drink a little bit of water. A little sip. Water lover. Hello Deku, how are you? Welcome, welcome. We're reading the second part of The Rats in the Walls tonight. Further sleep was out of the question, so, lighting a candle, I opened the door and went out in the gallery toward the stairs to my study, my cat following at my heels. Before we had reached the stone steps, however, the cat darted ahead of me and vanished down the ancient flight. As I descended the stairs myself, I became suddenly aware of sounds in the great room below, sounds of nature which could not be mistaken. The oak-paneled walls were alive with rats, scampering and milling, whilst my cat was racing about with the fury of a baffled hunter. Reaching the bottom, I switched on the light, which did not this time cause the noise to subside. The rats continued the riot, stampeding with such force and distinctness that I could finally assign to their motions a definitive direction. These creatures, in numbers apparently inexhaustible, were engaged in one stupendous migration from inconceivable heights to some depths conceivably or inconceivably below. I now heard steps in the corridor, and in another moment 2 servants pushed open the massive door. They were searching the house for some unknown source of disturbance which had thrown all the cats into a snarling panic and caused them to plunge precipitately down several flights of stairs and squat, yowling, before the closest door to the sub-cellar. I asked them if they had heard the rats, but they replied in the negative. And when I turned to call their attention to the sounds in the panels, I realized that the noise had ceased. With the 2 men, I went down to the door of the sub-cellar, but found the cats already dispersed. Later, I resolved to explore the crypt below, but for the present, I merely made a round of the traps. All were sprung, yet all were tenantless. Satisfying myself that no one had heard the rats save the felines and me, I sat in my study till morning, thinking profoundly and recalling every scrap of legend I had unearthed concerning the building I inhabited. I slept some in the forenoon, leaning back in the one comfortable library chair which my medieval plan of furnishing could not banish. Later I telephoned to Captain Norris, who came over and helped me explore the sub-cellar. Absolutely nothing Absolutely nothing untoward was found, although we could not repress a thrill at the knowledge that this vault was built by Roman hands. Every low arch and massive pillar was Roman, not the debased Romanesque of the building of the bungling Saxons, but the severe and harmonious classicism of the age of the Caesars. Indeed, the walls abounded with inscriptions familiar to the antiquarians, who had repeatedly explored the place, things like P. Getai Prop, Temp, Donna, and El Trai, as Pontifi Atis. The references to Atis made me shiver, for I had recalled Catullus and knew something of the hideous rites of his stern god, whose worship was so mixed with that of Cybele. Norris and I, by the light of lanterns, tried to interpret the odd and nearly effaced design on certain irregularly rectangular blocks of stone generally held to be altars, but could make nothing of them. Remember that on that one pattern, a sort of red sun, was held by students to imply non-Roman origin, suggesting that these altars had merely been adopted by the Roman priests for some older and perhaps sub-original temple on the same site. Hello, Jack. Yes, Lovecraft. On one of these blocks were some brown stains, which made me wonder. The largest, in the center of the room, had certain features on the upper surface which indicated its connections with fire, probably burnt offerings. Hello, Mizu, welcome. It's going very well. We're reading Lovecraft. How are you? Such were the sights in that crypt before whose door the cats had howled, and where Norris and I now determined to pass the night. Couches were brought down by the servants, who were told not to mind any nocturnal actions of the cats, and my cat was admitted as much for help as for companionship. We decided to keep the great oak door, a modern replica with slits for ventilation, tightly closed, and, with this attended to, we retired with lanterns still burning to await whatever might occur. Reading the rats in the walls. The vault was very deep in the foundation of the priory, and undoubtedly far down on the face of the beetling limestone cliff overlooking the waste valley. That it had been the goal of the scuffling and unexplainable rats I could not doubt, though why I could not tell. As we lay there expectantly, I found my vigil occasionally mixed with half-formed dreams from which the uneasy motion of the cat across my feet would arouse me. These dreams were not wholesome, but horribly like the one I had the night before. I saw again the twilit grotto, and the swineherd with his unmentionable fungus beasts wallowing in filth, and as I looked at these things, they seemed nearer and more distinct, so distinct that I could almost observe their features. Winter Saturn, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Gang. How are you? We're reading Lovecraft tonight. Welcome, welcome. Make yourself comfy. Then I did observe the flabby features of one of them, and I waked with such a scream that my cat started up, whilst Captain Norris, who had now slept, laughed considerably. Norris might have laughed more, or perhaps less, had he known what it was that made me scream, but I did not remember myself till later. The ultimate horror often paralyzes memory in a merciful way. Norris waked me when the phenomena began. Out of the same fretful dream I was called by his gentle shaking and his urging to listen to the cats. Indeed, there was much to listen to, for beyond the closed door at the head of the stone step was a veritable nightmare of felon yelling and crawling. Was my cat, unmindful of his kindred outside, was running excitedly around the bare stone walls, in which I heard the same babel of scurrying rats that had troubled me the night before. Hello, Scarbuff. We're reading The Rats in the Walls, a Lovecraft story. and acute terror now rose within me, for here were anomalies which nothing normal could well explain. These rats, if not the creatures of a madness which I share with the cats alone, must be burrowing and sliding Roman walls I thought to be of solid limestone blocks. Unless perhaps the action of water through more than 17 centuries had eaten winding tunnels which rotted bodies had worn clear and ample. But even so, the spectral horror was no less, for if these were living vermins, why did not Norris hear their disgusting commotion? Why did he urge me to watch my cat and listen to the cats outside? And why did he guess wildly and vaguely at what could have aroused them? I'm doing fine, thank you for asking. By the time I had managed to tell him, as rationally as I could, what I thought I was hearing, my ears gave me the last fading impression of the scarring, which had retreated still downward, far underneath this deepest of sub-cellars, till it seemed as if the whole cliff below me were riddled with casting rats. Norris was not as skeptical as I had anticipated, but instead seemed profoundly moved. He motioned to me to notice that the cats at the door had ceased their clamor, as if giving up the rats for lost. Most my cat had a burst of renewed restlessness and was clawing frantically around the bottom of the large stone altar in the center of the room, which was nearer Norris' couch than mine. My fear of the unknown was at this point very great. Something astounding had occurred, and so the Captain Norris, a younger, stouter, and presumably more natural and materialistic man, was affected fully as much as myself. Perhaps because of his lifelong and intimate familiarity with local legends. We could, for the moment, do nothing but watch the old black cat as he bowed with increasing fervor at the base of the altar, occasionally looking up and mewing to me in that persuasive manner which he used when he wished me to perform some favor for him. Norris took a lantern close to the altar and examined the place where my cat was bowing, silently kneeling and scraping away the lichens of centuries which joined the massive pre-Roman block to the tessellated floor. He did not find anything, and was about to abandon his efforts when I noticed a trivial circumstance which made me shudder, even though it implied nothing more than I had already imagined. I told him of it, and we both looked as its almost imperceptible manifestation with the fixedness of fascinated discovery and acknowledgement. It was only this, that the flame of the lantern set down near the altar was slightly, but certainly flickering from a draught of air which it had not before received, and which came indubitedly from this crevice between floor and altar where Norris was scraping away the lichens. We spent the rest of the night in the brilliantly lighted study, nervously discussing what we should do next. They discovered that some vault deeper than the deepest known masonry of the Romans underlay this accursed pile. Some vault, unsuspected by the curious antiquarians of 3 centuries, would have been sufficient to excite us without any background of the sinister. As it was, the fascination became twofold, and we posed in doubt whether to abandon our search and quit the priory forever in superstitious caution, or to gratify our sense of adventure and brave whatever horrors might await us in the unknown depths. By morning, we had compromised and decided to go to London to gather a group of archaeologists and scientific men fit to cope with the mystery. It should be mentioned that before leaving the sub-cellar we had vainly tried to move the central altar, which we now recognized as the gate to a new pit of nameless fear. What secret would open the gate, wiser men than we would have to find. During many days in London, Captain Norris and I presented our facts, conjectures, legendary anecdotes to 5 eminent authorities, all men who could be trusted to respect any family disclosures which future exploration might evolve. We found most of the items. Wrong line. We found most of them little disposed to scoff, but instead intensely interested and sincerely sympathetic. It is hardly necessary to name them all, but I may say that they include Sir William Brinton, whose excavations in that route excited most of the world in their day. Thank you so much for the follow, Nine Fuego. Welcome to the Vampire Gang. How are you? As we all took the train for Manchester, I felt myself poised on the brink of frightful revelation, a sensation symbolized by the air of mourning among the many Americans at the unexpected death of the president on the other side of the world. On the evening of August 7th, we reached Ixam Priory, where the servants assured me that nothing unusual had occurred. The cats, even mine, had been perfectly placid, and not a trap in the house had been sprung. We were to begin exploring on the following day, awaiting which I assigned well-appointed rooms to all my guests. I myself retired in my own tower chamber, with my cat across my feet. Sleep came quickly, but hideous dreams assailed me. There was a vision of a Roman feast like that of Trimalchio, with horror in a covered platter. Then came that damnable, recurrent thing about the swineherd and his filthy drove in the twilight grotto. Yet, when I awoke, it was full daylight, with normal sounds in the house below. The rats, living or spectral, had not troubled me, and my cat was quietly asleep. On going down, I found that the same tranquillity had prevailed elsewhere, a condition which one of the assembled servants, a fellow named Thornton, devoted to the physics, rather absurdly to the fact that I had now been shown the thing which certain forces had wished to show me. Oh, thank you for reminding me to stretch. Let me. Much better. All was now ready, and at 11 a.m. our entire group of 7 men, bearing powerful electric searchlights and the implements of excavation, went down to the sub-cellar and bolted the door behind us. My cat was with us, for the investigators found no occasion to despise his excitability, and were indeed anxious that he be present in case of obscure rodent manifestations. We noted the Roman inscriptions and unknown altar design only briefly, for 3 of the 7 had already seen them, and all knew their characteristics. Prime attention was paid to the momentous central altar, and within an hour of Sir William Brinton had caused it to tilt backward, balanced by some unknown species of counterweight. There now lay revealed such a horror as would have overwhelmed us had we not been prepared. Through an early square opening in the tiled floor, sprawling on a flight of stone steps, to prodigiously warn that it was little more than an inclined plane at the center, was a ghastly array of human or semi-human bones. Those which retained their collocation as skeletons showed attitudes of panic fear, and over all were the marks of rotten gnawing. The skulls denoted nothing short of utter idiocy, cretinism or primitive stamia epidome. With the hellishly littered steps arched the descending passage, seemingly chiseled from the solid rock, and conducting a current of air. This current was not a sudden and noxious rush as from a closed vault, but a cool breeze with something of freshness in it. We did not pause long, but shiveringly began to clear a passage down the steps. It was then that Sir William, examining the hewn walls, made the odd observation that the passage, according to the direction of the strokes, must have been chiseled from beneath. I must be very deliberate now and choose my words. After plugging down a few steps amidst the new bones, we saw that there was light ahead. Not any mystic phosphorescence, but a filtered daylight which could not come except from unknown fissures in the cliff that overlooked the waste of valley. That such fissures had escaped notice from outside was hardly remarkable, for not only is the valley wholly uninhabited, but the cliff is so high and beetling that only an aeronaut could study its face in detail. A few steps more, and our breaths were literally snatched from us by what we saw. So literally that Thornton, the physics investigator, actually fainted in the arms of the dazed man who stood behind him. Norris, his plump face utterly white and flabby, simply cried out inarticulately. Was to think that what I did was to gasp or hiss and cover my eyes. The man behind me, the only one of the party older than I, croaked the hackneyed "My God!" in the most correct voice I ever heard. Of 7 cultivated men, only Sir William Brinton retained his composure, a thing, more to his credit, because he led the party and must have seen the sight first. Remember Hansen asleep, only wake? No. Only sleep, no wake. Go to sleep, Volpo. Come on. I'm reading bedtime stories for you too. Should be going to bed. Okay? It was a twilit grotto of an enormous height, stretching away farther than any eye could see, a subterraneous world of limitless mystery and horrible suggestion. There were buildings and other architectural remains, in one terrified glance as a weird pattern of tumuli, a savage circle of monoliths, a low-domed Roman ruin, a sprawling Saxon pile, and an early English edifice of wood. But all these were dwarfed by the ghoulish spectacle presented by the general surface of the ground. For yards above the steps extended an insane tangle of human bones, or bones at least as human as those on the steps. Like a foamy sea they stretched, some falling apart, but others wholly or partly articulated as skeletons, these latter invariably in postures of demonic frenzy, either fighting off some menace or clutching other forms with cannibal intent. When Dr. Trask, the anthropologist, stooped to classify the skulls, he found a degraded mixture which utterly baffled him. They were mostly lower than the Piltdown men in the scale of evolution, but in every case definitely human. Many were of higher grade, and a very few were the skulls of supremely and sensitively developed types. All the bones were gnawed, mostly by rats, but somewhat by others of the half-human drove. Mixed with them were many tiny bones of rats, fallen members of the little army which closed the ancient epic. I wondered that any man among us lived and kept his sanity through that hideous day of discovery. Not half men or highest men could conceive a scene more wildly or incredible, more frenetically repellent, or more gothically grotesque than the twilight grotto through which we 7 staggered, each stumbling under revelation after revelation, and trying to keep for the nose from thinking of the events which must have taken place there 300 years, or 1,000, or 2,000, or 10,000 years ago. It was the antechamber of hell, and poor Thornton fainted again when Trask told him that some of the skeleton things must have descended as quadrupeds through the last 20 or more generations. Okay, let me reset on the chat. Okay. Horror piled on horror as we began to interpret the architectural remains. The quadruped things, with our occasional recruits from the pipette class, had been kept in stone pens, out of which they must have broken in their last delirium of hunger or rat fear. There had been great herds of them, evidently fattened on the coarse vegetables whose remains could be found as a sort of poisonous ensilage at the bottom of huge stone bins older than Rome. I knew now why my ancestors had had such excessive gardens. Would to heaven I could forget the purpose of the herd. I did not have to ask. Sir William, standing with his searchlight in the Roman ruin, translated aloud the most shocking ritual I have ever known, and told of the diet of the antediluvian cult which the priests of Cybele found and mingled with their own. Norris, used as he was to the trenches, could not walk straight when he came out of the English building. It was a butcher shop and kitchen. He had expected that, but it was too much to see familiar English implements in such a place, and to read familiar English graffiti there, some as recent as 1610. I could not go in the building whose demon activities were stopped only by the dagger of my ancestor, Walter de la Poer. Hello, Papa! Welcome! Shrimp for VTubers, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Gang, how are you? It's because I'm reading Kevin. Oh, hello, Mama. Boing Boing Close-Up is literally what the name says, but I have to, unfortunately, okay, don't get Boing Boing Close-Up or ties, because I could get banned due to the new updated toss. Actually, let me remove them from the latest, because I'd rather not risk it. I'll give you like close-ups from time to time, the less sus ones. That's all I can do. But unfortunately, Twitch won't let me. 6-3, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Gang, and thank you to the thank you for the follow to Spears 56 too. Do you love my book? Which one? Did you write a book? If so, go. Nice. Also, guys, welcome. We're reading Lovecraft tonight, if it can interest you. Okay, let me channel point. Remove them. Keep the little dance. Probably zoom a little bit in the little dance, maybe. Okay, we're almost at the end of the story, by the way. The Necronomicon? You mean the Necronomicon? What I did venture to enter was the low Saxon building whose oaken door had fallen, and there I found a terrible row of 10 stone cells with their rusty bars 3 head tenants, all skeletons of high grade, and on the bony forefinger of one I found a seal ring with my own coat of arms. Sir William found a vault with far older cells below the Roman chapel, but these cells were empty. Below them was a low crypt, with cases of formally arranged bones, some of them bearing terrible parallel inscriptions carved in Latin, Greek, and the tongue of Fija. Meanwhile, Dr. Trask had opened one of the prehistoric tumuli and brutalized skulls which were slightly more human than a gorilla's and which bore indescribable ideographic carvings. Through all this horror, the cat stalked unperturbed. Once I saw him monstruously perched atop a mountain of bones and wondered at the secrets that might lie behind his yellow eyes. Having grasped to some slight degree the frightful revelations of his twilight area, an area so hideously foreshadowed by my current dream, returned to that apparently boundless depth of midnight cavern where no ray of light from the cliff could penetrate. We should never know what sightless Stygian worlds yawned beyond the little distance we went, where it was decided that such secrets are not good for mankind. But there was plenty to engross us close at hand, where we had not gone far before the searchlights showed that accursed infinity of pits in which the rats had feasted, and whose sudden lack of replenishment had driven the ravenous rodent army first to turn on the living herd of starving things, and then to burst forth from the priory in that historic orgy of devastation which the peasants will never forget. God, those carrion black pits of sewed, picked bones and opened skulls, those nightmare chasms choked with the pithecanthropoid, Celtic, Roman, and English bones of countless unallowed centuries. Some of them were full, and none can say how deep they had once been. Others were still bottomless to our searchlights, and peopled by unnamable fancies. What, I thought, of the helpless rats that stumbled into such traps amidst the blackness of their caste in these grisly Tartarus? Hello, abandoned. Welcome. How are you? Doing fine, thank you for asking. I'm reading Lovecraft. Once my foot slipped near a horribly yawning brink, and I had a moment of ecstatic fear. I must have been musing a long time, for I could not see any of the party but a plump-capped Norris. Then there came a sound from that inky, boundless, further distance that I thought I knew, and I saw my old black cat dart past me like a winged Egyptian god, straight into the illimitable gulf of the unknown. But I was not far behind, for there was no doubt after another second. It was the eldritch scurrying of those fiend-born rats, always questing for new horrors and determined to lead me on even unto those grinning caverns of Earth's center where Nyarlathotep. Mirror it is. It was the eldritch scurrying of those fiend-born rats, always questing for new horrors, and determined to lead me on even unto those grinning caverns of Earth's center where Nyarlathotep, the mad faceless god, howls blindly to the piping of two enormous idiot flute players. My searchlight expired, but I still ran. I heard voices and yowls and echoes, but above all there gently rose that impious, insidious scurrying, gently rising, as a stiff-blooded corpse gently rises above an oily river that flows under endless onyx bridges to a black, putrid sea. Something bumped into me, something soft and plump. It must have been the rats, the viscous, gelatinous, ravenous army that feasts on the dead and the living. Why shouldn't rats eat a teleport as it teleports forbidden things? Devour my boy. Damn them all. And I yanked Saint Carfax with flames and burned the grandsire teleport and the secret. No, no, I tell you, I am not the demon swineherd in the Twilight Grotto. It was not Edward Norris' fat face on the flabby fungus thing. Who says I am a teleport? I lived, but my boy died. So Norris hold the line of a teleport? It's voodoo, I tell you. That spotted snake. Curse you, Thornton. I'll teach you to faint at what my family do. Splad to stinkard. I'll learn you how to cast. Would you swank me the quiz? Magna Mater, Magna Mater. Atis, diada guide sadadon, agus pas donaccord, donas donasort, agus litsa, ang. That is what they say I said when they found me in the blackness after 3 hours. Found me crouching in the blackness over the plump, half-eaten body of Captain Norris, with my own cat leaping and tearing at my throat. Now they have blown up Exam Priory, taken my cat away from me, and shut me into this barred room at Tarnwell with fearful whispers about my heredity and experiences. Thornton is in the next room, but they prevent me from talking to him. They are trying to suppress most of the facts concerning the Priory. When I speak of poor Norris, they accuse me of a hideous thing, but they must know that I did not do it. They must know it was the rats, the slithering, scurrying rats whose scampering will never let me sleep. The demon rats that race behind the padding in this room and beckon me down to the greater horrors than I have ever known. The rats they can never hear. The rats in the walls. And this is the end of the story. Yeah, I can speak Italian, but my streams are mostly in English, since my community is, for the most part, not Italian, or doesn't fully understand Italian, so I try to speak in English for the most part. Okay, let me fix this real quick. Okay. Pingoy, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Gang. How are you? Welcome. Okay. We're done with the rats in the walls. The next story would be the festival. Let me know if you're interested in that, or if you guys would prefer to chat a little bit, because I'll be super honest with you, today I'm more sleepy than usual. As you might have noticed, I kept on messing up the reading, and that's on me. So like, I guess I don't want to like mess up reading the stories, because I am very much sleepy today. Had like a hard day, you could say. I was a lot tired. Worked hard, so it was a busy day. fucking hate when the rig isn't working. Dang. Oh, let me stretch 1 second. And I'll drink a little bit more water. Water. I think I think I have enough in my mouth again, and it's kinda hurting, so wait, let me try to get the picture to see how big it is. It's kinda a hard spot to reach. I can't see it. I can't see it, unfortunately. I think I need to go to look at myself in the mirror. I'll do it later though, no worries. Okay, so for a... Wait, I'll actually read the next story by looking at a page like see. Okay, I'll read it from my PC so I can copy and paste it in LibreOffice and see the word speaker, because I don't know why, but the book, the words in the book, the letters are a little bit too small, and I am way too tired. Okay, let me actually do one thing first. To select the text and change the... Okay, English. Dang, I can't. There must be a way to select everything and just say them to hey, can you correct everything in English please, so I don't have to look at the red lines, that would be lovely. But here we go. Never mind, I think there's a way we will never finish. Oh, language. English. Okay, we're done. It was that easy. That's on me. I'm the stupid one here. Okay. Why it won't let me paste it now? Dang. Well, that's okay. I'm sure it will work again. I'm sure. If I open it again, it will work. So if I take this one and I go on language, we go. Wait, what? All text. Go another. No. English. Okay, I changed the language. And now it should work. I think it got bugged. Damn. That's kind of unfortunate. Come on. Come on, Libra. Nope. Close the program. Close the program. Okay. I fucking hate this. Are you guys having fun? Hope you're having more fun than me. More user interface Italian. Huh? The site wasn't promising. What happened? That it will let me paste the text for some unknown reason. Like it crashes. I don't know why. Like I'm literally doing nothing. I'm just trying to paste a little portion. Oh well, I will read it from this website with a white background. I will murder my eyes for your comfort, so I hope you appreciate it. I am killing my sight for you. The Festival by H.P. Lovecraft. It starts with a small quote. Efficient demones ut que non sunt, sic tamen quasi sint, conspicenda hominibus exhibenta lactanitus. I was far from home, and the spell of the eastern sea was upon me. In the twilight I heard it pounding on the rocks, and I knew it lay just over the hill where the twisting willows writhed against the clearing sky and the first stars of evening. And because my father had called me to the old town beyond, I pushed on through the shallow, nest-fallen snow along the road that soared lonely up to where Aldebaran twinkled among the trees, and toward the very ancient town I had never seen but often dreamed of. It was the Yuletide. The men call Christmas, though they know in their hearts it is older than Bethlehem and Babylon, older than Memphis and mankind. It was the Yuletide, and I had come at last to the ancient sea town where my people had dwelt and kept festival in the elder time when my festival was forbidden, where also they had commanded their sons to keep festival once every century. That the memory of primal secrets might not be forgotten, Mine were no people, and were old even when this land was settled 300 years before. And they were strange, because they had come as dark, furtive folk from opiate southern gardens of orchids, and spoke in another tongue before the Lord the tongue of the blue-eyed fishers. And now they were scattered, and shared only the rituals of mysteries that none living could understand. I was the only one who came back that night to the old fishing town, as the legend bade, for only the poor and the lonely remember. Then, beyond the hill's crest, a soaking spot outspreads frostily in the gloaming, snowy Kingsport, with its ancient veins and steeples, ridge poles and chimney spots, wharves and small bridges, willow trees and graveyards, endless labyrinths of steep, narrow, crooked streets, and dizzy church-crowned central peak that time durst not touch. Ceaseless mazes of colonial houses piled and scattered at all angles and levels, like a child's disordered blocks. Antiquity hovering on grey wings over winter-whitened gables and gambrel roofs. Fanlights and small paned windows, one by one gleaming out in the cold dusk to join Orion and the archaic stars. And against the road and wharves the sea pounded, the secretive, immemorial sea, out of which the people had come in the elder time. Okay, let me get a drink, because I got a drink. Water good. We love water. Beside the road, at its crest, a still higher summit rose, bleak and windswept, and I saw that it was a burying ground where black gravestones stuck ghoulishly through the snow like the decayed fingernails of a gigantic corpse. The breathless road was very lonely, and sometimes I thought I heard a distant horrible creaking as of a gibbet in the wind. They had hanged 4 kinsmen of mine for witchcraft in 1692, but I did not know just where. As the road wound down the seaward slope, I listened for the merry sounds of a village at evening, but did not hear them. Then I thought of the season, and felt that these old Puritan folk might well have Christmas customs strange to me, and full of silent heart-side prayer. So after that, I did not listen for merriment or look for wayfarers, but kept on down the past the hushed, lighted farmhouses and shadowy stone walls to where the signs of ancient shops and sea towers creaked in the salt breeze, and the grotesque knockers of pillared doorways glistened along deserted, unpaved lanes in the light of little, curtained windows. I had seen maps of the town, and knew where to find the home of my people. It was told that I should be known and welcomed, for village legends lives long, so I hastened through Back Street to Circle Court, and across the fresh snow on the one few flagstone pavement in the town, to where Green Lane leads off behind the market house. The old maps still held good, and I had no trouble, though at Arkham they must have lied when the city trolleys ran to this place, since I saw not a wire overhead. Snow would have hit the rails in any case. I was glad I had chosen to walk, for the white village had seemed very beautiful from the hill, and now I was eager to knock at the door of my people, the 7th house on the left in Green Lane, with an ancient peaked roof and jutting second story, all built before 1650. GG Gamer PD86, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the member gang. How are you? Hope you're doing fine. There were lights inside the house where I came upon it, and I saw from the diamond window panes that it must have been kept very close to its antique state. The upper part overhung the narrow grass-grown street and nearly met the overhanging part of the house opposite, so that I was almost in a tunnel with a low stone doorstep wholly free from snow. There was no sidewalk, but many houses had high doors reached by double flights of steps with iron railings. It was an odd scene, and because I was strange to New England, I had never known its like before. Though it pleased me, I would have relished it better if there had been footprints in the snow, and people in the streets, and a few windows without drawn curtains. When I sounded the archaic iron knocker, I was half afraid. Some fear had been gathering in me, perhaps because of the strangeness of my heritage, and the bleakness of the evening, and the queerness of the silence in that aged town of curious customs. And when my knock was answered, I was fully afraid, because I had not heard any footsteps before the door creaked open. But I was not afraid long, for the gaunt, slippered old man in the doorway had a bland face that reassured me, and though he made signs that he was dumb, he wrote a quaint and ancient welcome with a stylus, and was able to, and Book's tablet he carried. He beckoned me into a low, candlelit room with massive exposed rafters and dark, stiff, sparse furniture of the 17th century. The past was vivid there, for not an attribute was missing. There was a cavernous fireplace and a spinning wheel at which a bent old woman in loose wrapper and deep poke bonnet sat back toward me, soundly spinning despite the festive season. An indefinite dampness seemed upon the place, and I marveled that no fire should be blazing. The high-backed settle faced the row of curtained windows at the left and seemed to be occupied, though I was not sure. I did not like everything about what I saw, and felt again the fear I had had. This fear grew stronger from what had before lessened it, for the more I looked at the old man's blunt face, the more its very bluntness terrified me. The eyes never moved, and the skin was too like wax. Finally, I was sure it was not a face at all, but a fiendishly cunning mask. But the flabby hands, curiously gloved, wrote genially on the tablet and told me I must wait a while before I could be led to the place of the festival. Yes, I am reading Lovecraft. This is a story called The Festival. Pointing to a chair, table, and pile of books, the old man now left the room, and when I sat down to read, I saw that the books were hoary and mouldy, and that they included all the Morrister's wild marvels of science, the terrible Sadducismus Triumphatus of Joseph Glanville, published in 1681, the shocking Demonolatreia of Remigius, printed in 1595 at Lyons, and, worst of all, the unmentionable Necronomicon of the mad Arab Abdul al-Zaraid, Inolaus Formius' forbidden Latin translation, a book which I had never seen, but of which I had heard monstrous things whispered. No one spoke to me, but I could hear the creaking of signs in the wind outside, and the whir of the wheel as the bonneted old woman continued her sound spinning. I thought the room and the books and the people were very morbid and disquieting, but because an old tradition of my father's had summoned me to strange feasting, I resolved to expect queer things. So I tried to read. I soon became trembling absorbed by something I found in that accursed Necronomicon, a tooth and a legend too hideous for sanity or consciousness. But I disliked it when I fancied I heard the closing of one of the windows that settle faced, as if it had been stealthily opened. It had seemed to follow a whirring that was not of the old woman's spinning wheel. It was not much, though, for the old woman was spinning very hard, and the aged clock had been striking. After that I lost the feeling that there were persons on the settle, and was reading intently and shudderingly when the old man came back, booted and dressed in a loose antique costume, and sat down on that very bench, so that I could not see him. It was certainly nervous waiting, and the blasphemous book in my hands made it doubtingly so. When 11 struck, however, the old man stood up, glided to a massive card chest in a corner, and got 2 hooked cloaks, one of which he donned, and the other of which he draped around the old woman, who was ceasing her monotonous spinning. Then they both started for the outer door, the woman lamely creeping, and the old man, after picking up the very book I had been reading, beckoning me as he drew his hood over that unmoving face or mask. We went out into the moonless and tortuous network of that incredibly ancient town, went out as the lights in the curtained windows disappeared one by one, and the dog star leered at the struck globe. And the dog star leered at the throng of cloaked figures that poured silently from every doorway and formed monstrous processions up the street, and that, past the creaking signs and antediluvian gables, the thatched roof and diamond-paned windows, threading precipitous lanes where decaying houses overlapped and crumbled together, gliding across open courts and churchyards where the bobbing lanthorns made the eldritch drunken constellations. Amid these hushed throngs, I followed my voiceless guide, jostled by elbows that seemed preternaturally soft, and pressed by chests and stomachs that seemed abnormally pulpy, but seeing never face and hearing never a word. Up, the eerie columns slithered, and I saw that all the travelers were converging as they flowed near a sort of focus of crazy alleys at the top of a high hill in the center of the town, where perched a great white church. I had seen it from the road's crest when I looked at Kingsport in the new dusk, and it had made me shiver because Aldebaran had seemed to balance itself a moment on the ghostly spire. There was an open space around the church, partly churchyard with spectral shafts, and partly half-paved square swept nearly bare of snow by the wind, and lined with unwholesomely archaic houses having peaked roofs and overhanging gables. Death fires danced over the tombs, revealing gruesome vistas, though queerly failing to cast any shadows. Past the churchyard, where there were no houses, I could see over the hill's summit and watch the glimmer of stars on the harbor, though the town was invisible in the dark. Only once in a while a lanthorn bobbed horribly through serpentine alleys on its way to overtake the throng that was now slipping speechlessly into the church. I waited till the crowd had oozed into the black doorway, until all the straggles had followed. The old man was pulling at my sleeve, but I was determined to be the last. Then I finally went, the sinister man and the old spinning woman before me. Crossing the threshold into that swarming temple of unknown darkness, I turned once to look at the outside world as the church phosphorescence cast a sickly glow on the hilltop pavement. And as I did so I shuddered, for though the wind had not left much snow, a few patches did remain on the path near the door, and in that fleeting backward look it seemed to my troubled eyes that they bore no mark of passing feet, not even mine. The church was scarce lighted by all the lanthorns that had entered it, for most of the throng had already vanished. They had steamed up the aisles between the high white pews to the trapdoor of the vaults which yawned loathsomely open just before the pulpit, and were now squirming noiselessly in. I followed dumbly down the foot-worn steps and into the dank, suffocating crypt. The tale of that sinuous line of night marchers seemed very horrible, and as I saw them wriggling into a venerable tomb, they seemed more horrible still. Then I noticed that the tomb's floor had an aperture down which the throng was sliding, and in a moment we were all descending an ominous staircase of rough-hewn stone. A narrow spiral staircase, damp and peculiarly odorous, that wound endlessly down into the bowels of the hill past the monotonous walls of dripping stone blocks and crumbling mortar. It was a silent, shocking descent, and I observed after a horrible interval that the walls and steps were changing in nature as if chiseled out of the solid rock. What mainly troubled me was that the myriad footfalls made no sound and set up no echoes. After moraines of descent, I saw some side passages or burrows leading from unknown recesses of blackness to this shaft of night and misery. Soon they became excessively numerous, like impious catacombs of nameless menace, and their pungent odor of decay grew quite unbearable. I knew we must have passed through the mountain and beneath the earth of Kingsport itself, and I shivered that the town should be so aged and maggoty with subterraneous evil. Yeah, it's my cat. I made a model for her, but she is my real-life cat. Her name is Mentina. She's a black cat and she is almost 3 years old. Oh yeah, let me open the soft rain sound for you. For sure. Can you hear them? Oh, Deku, good night. Thanks for the button stories. Your reading was lovely as always. Oh, thank you so much. Have a good sleep and hope to see you soon again. Bye bye. Sleep well and sweet dreams. Can raise the soft rain sounds, so hopefully you can hear them better. Please let me know if they're too loud. Then I saw the lurid shimmering of pale light and heard the insidious lapping of soundless waters. Again I shivered, for I did not like the things that the night had brought, and wished bitterly that no forefather had summoned me to this primal rite. As the steps in the passage grew broader, I heard another sound, the thin, whining mockery of a feeble flute, and suddenly there spread out before me the boundless vista of an inner world, a vast fungus shore, lit by a belching column of sick greenish flame, and washed by a wide oily river that flowed from abysses frightful and unsuspected to join the blackest gulfs of immemorial ocean. Fainting and gasping, I looked at that unhallowed erebus of Titan dust-stool, leprous fire, and the slimy water, and saw the cloaked throngs forming a semicircle around the blazing pillar. It was the Eulerite, older than man and fathered, and fated to survive him, the primal rite of the solstice and of spring's promise beyond the snows, the rite of fire and evergreen, light and music. And in the Stygian grotto I saw them do the rite, and adore the sick pillar of flame, and throw into the water a handful of gouged out of the viscous vegetation which glittered green in the chlorothic glare. I saw this, and I saw something amorphously squatted far away from the light, piping noisomely on a flute, and as the thing piped, I thought I heard noxious muffled flutterings in the faded darkness where I could not see. But what frightened me the most was that flaming column, spouting volcanically from depths profound and inconceivable, casting no shadows as healthy flame should, and coating the nature stone above with a nasty venomous verdigris. For in all that seething combustion no warmth lay, but only the clamminess of death and corruption. The man who had brought me now squirmed to a point directly beside the hideous flame, and made stiff ceremonial motions to the semicircle he faced. At certain stages of the ritual, they did groveling obeisance, especially when he held above his head that abhorrent Necronomicon he had taken with him, and I shared all the obeisances because I had been summoned to this festival by the writings of my forefathers. Then the old man made a signal to the half-seen flute player in the darkness, which player thereupon changed its feeble drone to a scarce louder drone in another key, precipitating as it did so a horror unthinkable and unexpected. At this horror I sank nearly to the lichened earth, transfixed with a dread not of this nor any word, but only of the mad spaces between the stars. Drink a second. Out of the unimaginable blackness beyond the gangrenous glare of the cold flame, out of the Tartarian lakes through which that holy river rolled uncanny, unheard, and unsuspected, there flowed rhythmically a horde of tame, trained, hybrid-winged things that no sound eye could ever wholly grasp, or sound brain ever wholly remember. They were not altogether crows, nor moles, nor buzzards, nor ants, nor vampire bats, nor decomposed human beings, but something I cannot and must not recall. They flopped limply along, half with their webbed feet and half with their membranous wings. And as they reached the throng of celebrants, the cold figures seized and mounted them, and rode off one by one along the reaches of that unlighted river, into pits and galleries of panic, where poison springs feed frightful and undiscoverable cataracts. The old spinning woman had gone with the throng, and the old man remained only because I had refused when he motioned me to seize an animal and ride like the rest. I saw, when I staggered to my feet, that the amorphous flute player had rolled out of sight, but that two of the beasts were patiently standing. As I hung back, the old man produced his stylus and tablet and wrote that he was the true deputy of my fathers, who had founded the Yule worship in this ancient place, that it had been decreed I should come back, and that in the most secret mysteries were yet to be performed. He wrote this in a very ancient hand, and when I still hesitated, he pulled from his loose robe a seal ring and a watch, both with my family arms, to prove that it was what he said. But it was a hideous proof, because I knew from old papers that the watch had been buried with my great-great-great-great-grandfather in 1698. Presently the old man drew back his hood and pointed to the family resemblance in his face, but I only shuddered, because I was sure that the face was merely a devilish buxom mask. The flopping animals were now scratching restlessly at the lichens, and I saw that the old man was nearly as restless himself. When one of the things began to waddle and edge away, it turned quickly to stop it, so that the suddenness of his motion dislodged the waxen mask from what should have been his head, and then, because the nightmare's position barred me from the stone staircase down which we had come, I flung myself into the oily underground river that bubbled somewhere to the caves of the sea. Flung myself into the putrescent juice of earth's inner horrors, before the madness of my screams could bring down upon me all the charnel legions these pest gulfs might conceal. At the hospital they told me I had been found half frozen in Kingsport Harbor at dawn, clinging to the drifting spar that accident sent to save me. They told me I had taken the wrong fork of the hill I rode the night before, and fallen over the cliff at Orange Point, a thing that had used thrown prints found in the snow. There was nothing I could say, because everything was wrong. Everything was wrong, with a broad window showing a sea of roofs, in which only about 1 in 5 was ancient, and the sound of trolleys and motors in the streets below. They insisted that this was Kingsport, and I could not deny it. When I went delirious at hearing that the hospital stood near the old churchyard on the central hill, they sent me to St. Mary's Hospital in Arkham, where I could have better care. I liked it there, for the doctors were broad-minded, and even let me their influence in obtaining the carefully sheltered copy of Alas Red's objectionable Necronomicon from the library of Miskatonic University. They said something about a psychosis, and agreed I had better get any harassing obsession off my mind. So I read again that hideous chapter, and shuddered doubly, because it was indeed not new to me. I had seen it before, let footprints tell what they might, and where it was I had seen it were best forgotten. There was no one, in waking hours, who could remind me of it, but my dreams are filled with terror, because of phrases I dare not quote. I dare quote only one paragraph, but into such English as I can make from the awkward low Latin. The nethermost caverns, wrote the Medarab, are not for the fathoming of eyes that see, for their marvels are strange and terrific. Curse the ground where dead toads live, new and deadly bodies, and evil the mind that is held by no head. Wisely did Ibn Skakabau say that happy is the tomb where no wizard hath lain, and happy the town at night whose wizards are all ashes. For it is of all the rumour that the soul of the devil bought Hestes not from his charnel clay, but fats and instructs the very worm that knows, till out of corruption horrid life springs, and the tall scavengers of earth wax crafty to vex it, and swell monstrous to block it. Great holes secretly are digged, where earths pour out to suffice, and things have learned to walk, without to crawl. And this is the end of the festival story. Ricklings and Huxacube, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Gangs. How are you doing? Hope you're doing fine. Might get a little bit closer. Welcome. Tonight we are reading Lovecraft stories. We have written The Rats in the Walls. We have written brain, please. We have read so far The Rats in the Walls, and we just finished reading The Festival. I might have time, actually. Oh, there it is. I knew it. I lost my piece of paper. It was still in the book, but for some reason I couldn't find it. The next one is a bit too long. Kitsune Kawaii, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Gang. How are you doing? Okay. Okay, we can read another one. Let me... Well, that's... Oh, here, there it is. This is the next story that we are gonna read. It's called He. That's the title. That's it. Oh, Dark Flash, welcome. How are you? Just in time for the next story. I'm so happy that you made it. So let me just sit in my chair a little better because my posture is kinda bad. Okay, are you ready for the next story? Hope so. Let's start. I saw him on a sleepless night when I was walking desperately to save my soul in my vision. My coming to New York had been a mistake, for whereas I had looked for poignant wonder and inspiration in the teeming labyrinths of ancient streets that twist endlessly from forgotten courts and squares and waterfronts to courts and squares and waterfronts equally forgotten, and in the cyclopean modern towers and pinnacles that rise blackly Babylonian under warning moons, I had found instead only a sense of horror and oppression which threatened to master, paralyze, and annihilate me. The disillusion has been gradual. Coming for the first time upon the town, I have seen it in the sunset from a bridge, majestic above its waters, its incredible peaks and pyramids rising flower-like and delicate from pools of violet mist to play with the flaming golden clouds and the first stars of evening. Then it had lighted up windows by window above the shimmering tides, where lanterns nodded and glided, and deep horns played weird harmonies, and itself became a starry firmament of dream, redolent of fairy music, and one with the marvels of Carcassonne and Samarkand, and El Dorado, and the glorious and the half-fabulous cities. Shortly afterward, I was taken through those antique ways so dear to my fancy, narrow, curving alleys and passages, where rows of red Gregorian brick blinked with small pane dormers above pillared doorways that had looked on gilded sedans and paneled coaches. And in the first flash of realization of these long-wished things, I thought I had indeed achieved such treasures as would make me in time a poet. All good early gut feel is on my arm now. Nice! Hello Buddy Rock, welcome. I am reading a Lovecraft story called He. So I hope you can enjoy the reading. It's a more older kind of English, so some words are very unused nowadays, I must say, but I love Lovecraft stories a lot. But success and happiness were not to be. Garish daylight shewed only squalor and dullinage, and the noxious elephantiasis of climbing, spreading stone, where the moon had hinted of loveliness and elder magic, and the throng of people that seated through the flume-like streets were swarthy strangers with hardened faces and narrow eyes, shrewd strangers without dreams and without kinship to the scenes about them, who could never mean aught to a blue-eyed man of the old folk, with a love of fair green lanes and white New England village steeples in his heart. So, instead of the poems I had hoped for, there came only shuddering blankness and ineffable loneliness, and I saw at last the fearful truth which no one had ever dared to breathe before. The unwhisperable secret of secrets, the fact that this city of stone and street door is not a ancient perpetuation of old New York, as London is of old London and Paris of old Paris, but that it is in fact quite dead, its sprawling body imperfectly embalmed and infested with queer animate things which have nothing to do with it as it was in life. Upon making this discovery, I ceased to sleep comfortably, though something of resigned tranquility came back as I gradually formed the habit of keeping off the streets by day and venturing abroad only at night, when darkness calls forth what little of the past still hovers wreath-like about, and old white doorways remember the stalwart forms that once passed through them. With this mode of relief, I even wrote a few poems, and still refrained from going home to my people, lest I seemed to crawl back ignobly in defeat. Lucky that will stay a while. Nice! I'm happy to have you here. Oh, wait, come back. There it is. Then, on a sleepless night's walk, I met the man. It was in a grotesque hidden courtyard of the Greenwich section, for there in my ignorance I had settled, having heard of the place as the natural home of poets and artists. The archaic lanes and houses and unexpected bits of square and court had indeed delighted me, and when I found the poets and artists to be loud-voiced pretenders whose quaintness is tinsel and whose laser denial of all that pure beauty which is poetry and art, I stayed on for love of these venerable things. I've studied them as they were in their prime, when old Greenwich was a placid village, not yet engulfed by the town, and in the hours before dawn, when all the revellers had slunk away, I used to wander alone among their cryptical windings and brood upon the curious arcana which generations must have deposited there. This kept my soul alive, and gave me a few of those dreams and visions for which the poet far within me cried out. The man came upon me at about 2 one cloudy August morning, as I was threading a series of detached courtyards, now accessible only through the lighted hallways of intervening buildings, but once forming parts of a continuous network of picturesque alleys. I had heard of them by vague rumor, and realized that they could not be upon any map of today, but the fact that they were forgotten only endeared them to me, so that I had sought them with twice my usual eagerness. Now that I had found them, my eagerness was again redoubled, for something in their arrangement dimly hinted that there might be only a few of many such, with dark, damp counterparts wedged obscurely betwixt high blank walls and deserted rear tenements, or lurking limplessly behind archways, unbetrayed by hordes of the foreign-speaking, or guarded by furtive and uncommunicative artists, whose practices do not invite publicly or the light of day. He spoke to me without invitation, noting my mood and glances as I studied certain knockered doorways above armor-railed steps. The pallid glow of tracery transforms feebly, lighting in my face. His own face was a shadow, and he wore a white-brimmed hat which somehow blended perfectly with the out-of-date cloak he affected, but I was sadly disquieted even before he addressed me. His form was very slight, thin, almost to cadaverousness, and his voice proved phenomenally soft and hollow, though not particularly deep. He had, he said, noticed me several times at my wanderings, and inferred that I resembled him in loving the vestiges of former years. I would now like the guidance of one long practice in these explorations, and possessed of local information profoundly deeper than any which an obvious newcomer could possibly have ingrained. As he spoke, I caught a glimpse of his face in the yellow beam from a solitary attic window. It was a noble, even a handsome, elderly countenance, and bore the marks of a lineage and a refinement unusual for the age and place. Yet some quality about it disturbed me almost as much as its features pleased me. Perhaps it was too white, or too expressionless, or too much out of keeping with the locality, to make me feel easy or comfortable. Nevertheless, I followed him, for in those dreary days my quest for antique beauty and mystery was all that I had to keep myself alive, and I reckoned it as a rare favor of fate to fall in with one whose kindred seeking seemed to have penetrated so much farther than mine. I'll drink some water. 1 second. Hey Dork, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Gang, how are you? Okay, let's resume the story. Something in the night constrained the cloaked man to silence, and for a long hour he led me forward without needless words, making only the briefest of comments concerning ancient names and dates and changes, and directing my progress very largely by gestures as we squeezed through interstices, tiptoed through corridors, clambered over brick walls, and once crawled on hands and knees through a low arched passage of stone whose immense length and tortuous twisting evinced lest every hint of geographical location I had managed to preserve. The things we saw were very old and marvelous, or at least they seemed so in the few straggling rays of light by which I viewed them, and I should never forget the tottering Ionic columns and fluted pilasters and drawn-headed iron fence posts and fluttering linteled windows and decorative fanglings that appeared to grow quainter and stranger the deeper we advanced into this inexhaustible maze of unknown antiquity. We met no person, and as time passed, the lighted windows became fewer and fewer. The street lights we first encountered had been of oil, and of the ancient losing pattern. Later, I noticed some with candles, and the last, traversing a horrible unlighted court, where my guide had to lead with its gloved hand through a total blackness to a narrow wooden gate in a high wall. We came upon a fragment of valley lit only by lanterns in front of every seventh house. Unbelievably colonial tin lanterns with conical tops and holes punctured in the sides. This alley led steeply uphill, more steeply than I thought possible in this part of New York, and the upper end was blocked squarely by the ivy-clad wall of a private estate, beyond which I could see a pale cupola and the tops of trees waving against the vague lightness in the sky. In this wall was a small, low-arched gate of nail-studded black oak, which the man proceeded to unlock with a ponderous key. Leading me within, he steered the course in utter blackness over what seemed to be a gravel path, and finally up a flight of stone steps on the door of the house, which he unlocked and opened for me. We entered, and as we did so, I grew faint from a reek of infinite mustiness which welled out to meet us, and which must have been the fruit of unwholesome centuries of decay. My host appeared not to notice this, and in courtesy I kept silence as he piloted me up a curving stairway, across a hall, and into a room whose door I heard him lock behind us. Then, as we pulled the curtains off the three small paned windows that barely showed themselves against the lightening sky, after which he crossed to the mantel, struck flint and steel, lighted 2 candles of a candelabrum of 12 scones, and made a gesture enjoining soft-toned speech. The Unchained R.L. Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Gang. How are you? Welcome, welcome. In this feeble radiance, I saw that we were in a spacious, well-furnished and panelled library dating from the first quarter of the 18th century, with splendid doorway pediments, a delightful Doric cornice, and a magnificently carved over mantel with scroll and urn top. Above the crowded bookshelves, at intervals along the walls, were well-brought family portraits, all tarnished to an enigmatical dimness, and bearing an unmistakable likeness to the man who now motioned me to a chair beside the graceful Chippendale table. Before seating himself across the table from me, my host paused for a moment, as if in embarrassment, then, tardily removing his gloves, wide-brimmed hat, and cloak, stood theatrically revealed in full mid-Gregorian costume. From cute hair and neck ruffles to knee breeches, silk cuffs, and the buckled shoes I had not previously noticed. Now, slowly sinking to a large-back chair, he commenced to eye me intently. Without his hat, he took on an aspect of extreme age, which was scarcely visible before, and I wondered if this unperceived mask of singular longevity were not one of the sources of my original disquiet. When he spoke at length, his soft, hollow, and carefully muffled voice not infrequently covered, and now and then I had great difficulty in following him, as I listened with a thrill of amazement and half-disavowed alarm which grew each instant. "You behold, sir," my host began, "a man of very eccentrical habits, for whose costume no apology need be offered to one with your wit and inclinations. Reflecting upon better times, I have not scrupled to ascertain their ways and adopt their dress and manners, an indulgence which offends none if practised without ostentation. It hath been my good fortune to retain the rural seat of my ancestors, swallowed through it was by 2 towns, first Greenwich, which built up hither after 18th century, after 1830s. Then New York, we joined on near 1830. There were many reasons for the close keeping of this place in my family, and I have not been remiss in discharging such obligations. The squire who succeeded to it in 1768 studied certain arts and made certain discoveries, all connected with influences residing in this particular plot of ground, and eminently deserving of the strongest guarding. Some curious effects of these arts and discoveries and I purpose to shew you, under the strictest secrecy, and I believe I may rely on my judgment of man enough to have no distrust to either your interest or your fidelity." Oh boy, I think I will finish this story and then narrate to someone, because I starting to like fall asleep and it's hard to read. Very sleepy. Yes. He paused, but I could only nod my head. I have stated I was alarmed, yet to my soul nothing was more deadly than the material daylight world of New York, and whether this man were a harmless eccentric or a wielder of dangerous arts, I had no choice save to follow him and slake my sense of wonder or whatever he might have to offer. So I listened. To my ancestor, he softly continued, there appeared to reside some very remarkable qualities in the will of mankind, qualities having a little suspected dominance not only over the acts of oneself and of others, but over every variety of force and substance in nature, and over many elements and dimensions deemed more universal than nature is herself. May say that he flaunted the sanctity of things as great as space and time, and that he put to strange uses the rights of certain half-breed Red Indians once encamped upon this hill. These Indians showed color when the place was built, and were bloody pestilent in asking to visit the ground at the full moon. For years they stole over the coal each month when they could, and by stealth performed certain acts. Then, in '68, the new squire catched them at their doings, and stood still at what he saw. Thereafter, he bargained with them and exchanged the free access of his grounds for the exact inwardness of what they did. Learning that their grandfathers got part of their custom from red ancestors and part from an old Dutchman in the time of the States General, and pox on him, I'm afeard the squire must have served them monstrous bad rum, whether or not by intent, for a week after he learned the secret he was the only man living that knew it. You, sir, are the first outsider to be told there is a secret. As believe me if I'd have risked tempering that match with the powers, had it not been so hot after bygone things. I shuddered as the man grew colloquial, and with familiar speech of another day, he went on. But you must know, sir, that what the squire got from those mongrel savages was but a small part of the learning he came to have. He had not been at Oxford for nothing, nor talked to no account with an ancient chemist and astrologer in Paris. He was, in fine, made sensible that all the world is but the smoke of our intellects, past the bidding of the vulgar, but by the wise to be puffed out and thrown in like any cloud of prime Virginia tobacco. What we want, we may make about us, and what we don't want, we may sweep away. I won't say that all this is wholly true in body, but is sufficient true to furnish a very pretty spectacle now and then. You, I conceive, will be tickled by better sight of certain other years than your fancy affords you, so be pleased to hold back any fright at what is assigned to you. Come to the window and be quiet. My host now took my hand to draw me to one of the two windows on the long side of the malodorous room, and at the first touch of his ungloved finger I turned cold. His flesh, though dry and firm, was of the quality of ice, and I almost shrank away from his pulling, but again I thought of the emptiness and horror of reality, and boldly prepared to follow whithersoever I might be led. Once at the window, the man drew apart the yellow silk curtains and directed my stare into the blackness outside. For a moment, I saw nothing save a myriad of tiny dancing lights far, far before me, and then, as if in response to an insidious motion on my host's end, a flash of heat lightning played over the scene, and I looked out upon a sea of luxuriant foliage unpolluted, and not a sea of roofs to be expected by any normal mind. On my right, the Hudson glittered wickedly, and in the distance ahead I saw the unhealthy shimmer of a vast salt marsh constellated with nervous fireflies. The flash died, and an evil smile illumined the waxy face of it. My neck. Of the aged necromancer. Oh, wait. I need to rest my head a bit. This is Gender and Fi. Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Camp. And thank you, Poppy, CZ Poppy, for the follow as well. Welcome to the Vampire Camp too. Hello, Peter. Sorry I took a little down because yesterday my network is back and sometimes the drink comes back. Don't to go into details, but it's scary. Oh, it's okay, don't worry. Reading horror stories after all, talking about the spooky things is perfectly in theme with what we're reading actually. I hope you won't have that nightmare anymore. I kind of have recurring nightmares too, and I know how bad they can be. And I really hope that you'll have a nice sleep with a good dream. Maybe you'll dream about a lot of kittens. That's a nice dream, if you ask me. Okay, let me resume the story. Actually, I'll go grab some water because I finished my bottle. So BRB. Okay, I'm back. Grabbed some water, refilled my bottle, got water to drink too, and let's continue. That was me before my time, before the new squire's time. Pray let us try again. I was faint, even fainter than the hateful modernity of that accursed city had made me. Good God, I whispered. Can you do that for any time? And as he nodded, and bared the black stumps of what had once been yellow fangs, I clutched at the curtains to prevent myself from falling. But he stared at me with a terrible, ice-cold glow, and once more made his insidious gesture. Again the lightning flashed, but this time upon a scene not wholly strange. It was Greenwich, the Greenwich that used to be, with here and there a roof or row of houses as we see it now, yet with the lovely green lanes and fields and bits of grassy common. The marsh still glittered beyond, but in the farther distance the steeples of what was then all of New York, Trinity and St. Paul's, and the brick church dominating their sisters, and a faint haze of wood smoke hovering over the whole. I breathed hard, but not so much from the sight itself as from the possibilities my imagination terrifiedly conjured up. Can you, dare you, go far? I spoke with awe, and I think he shared it for a second, but the evil grin returned. Far? What I have seen will bless you to a mad statue of stone. Back, back, forward, forward. Look, you pulling liquid. And as he snored the phrase under his breath, his gesture anew. bringing to the skies a flash more blinding than either which had come before. For full 3 seconds I could glimpse that pandemonic sight, and in those seconds I saw a vista which will ever afterward torment me in dreams. I saw the heavens verminous with strange falling things, and beneath them a hellish black city of giant stone terraces with impious pyramids flying savagely to the moon, and devil lights burning from unnumbered windows. And swarming loathsomely on aerial galleries, I saw the yellow, squint-eyed people of that city, robed horribly in orange and red, and dancing insanely to the pounding of fevered kettle drums, the clatter of obscene crotala, and the maniacal moaning of muted horns, whose ceaseless dirges rose and fell undulantly like the waves of an unhallowed ocean of bitumen. Hello Icarus, welcome. How are you? I saw this vista, I say, and heard as with the mighty the blasphemous Dom Daniel of cacophony which companioned it. It was the shrieking fulfillment of all the horror which that corpse city had ever stirred in my soul, and forgetting every injunction to silence, I screamed and screamed and screamed as my nerves gave way and the walls quivered about me. Then, as the flesh subsided, I saw that my house was trembling too, a look of shock and fear half blotting from his face the serpent distortion of rage which my screams had excited. He tottered, clutched at the curtains as I had done before, and wriggled his head wildly like a hunted animal. God knows he had a cause, for as the echoes of my screaming died away, there came another sound so hellishly suggestive that only numbed emotion kept me sane and conscious. It was the steady, stealthy creaking on the stairs beyond the locker door, as with the ascent of a barefoot or skin-shod horde, and at last the cautious, purposeful rattling of the brass latch that glowed in the feeble candlelight. The old man clawed and spat at me through the mouldy air, and barked things in his throat as he swayed with a yellow curtain he clutched. "The full moon, damn yelping dog, you call them, and they've come for me. Moccasin feet, dead men, can't sing ye, ye right devils, but the poison aroma yours. Hadn't I kept your box-throated magic safe? You swelled yourself sick, curse ye, and you must needs blame the squire. Let go you, and hand the ledge. I've not for ye here." At this point, 3 slow and very deliberate raps shook the panels of the door, and the white foam gathered at the mouth of the frantic magician. His fright, turning to steely despair, left the room for a resurgence of his rage against me, and he staggered a step toward the table on whose edge I was standing myself. The curtains, still clutched in his right hand and his left clawed out at me, grew taut and finally clashed down from their lofty fastenings, admitting to the room a flood of that full moonlight which the brightening of the sky had presaged. In those greenish beams the candles paled, and a new semblance of decay spread over the moss-creaking room, with its swarmy paneling, sagging floor, battered mantel, rickety furniture, and the ragged draperies. It spread over the old man too, whether from the same source or because of his fear and vehemence, and I saw him shrivel and blacken, and his lurch near and strove to ram me with filtering talons. All his eyes stayed whole, and they colored with a propulsive, dilated incandescence, which grew as the face around them charred and dwindled. I'm doing fine, thank you for asking. Was it that I just read how the words were written? I don't know what kind of accent that should have been, but I guess Scottish works. Oh yeah, have bad dreams, recurring bad dreams about things that happened to me IRL. So like I really do know how it feels to have those nightmares. They're awful. I wouldn't wish them upon anybody, honestly. Not even my worst enemies. And Peter, I hope you will take some rest, and you should like you know what I do when I have bad dreams? I usually drink some chamomile tea before going to bed, and I look at pictures of cute animals, and it helps me a lot. But some if there's no coffee in the morning, yeah, same honestly. If I don't drink coffee after lunch too, I like fall asleep immediately. No, we're almost at the end of the story, nice. Okay, let's go. The rapping was now repeated with greater insistence, and this time bore a hint of metal. The black thing facing me had become only a head with eyes, impotently trying to wriggle across the sinking floor in my direction, and occasionally emitting feeble little spits of immortal malice. Now swift and splintering balls assailed the sickly panels, and I saw the gleam of a tomahawk as it cleft the rending wood. I did not move, for I could not, but watched dazedly as the door fell in pieces to me. The colossal, shapeless influx of inky substance stared with shining, malevolent eyes, apart thickly, like a flood of oil bursting a rotten bulkhead, overturned the chair as it spread, and finally flowed under the table and across the room to where the blackened head with the eyes still glared at me. Around that head it closed, totally swallowing it up, and in another moment it had begun to recede, bearing away its invisible burden without touching me, and flowing out of that black doorway and down the stairs, which creaked as before, though in reverse order. Then the floor gave way at last, and I slid gaspingly down into the nighted chamber below, choking with cobwebs and half swooning with terror. The green moon, shining through broken windows, showed me the hall door half open, and as I rose from the plaster-strewn floor and twisted myself free from the sagged ceiling, I saw sweep past it an awful torrent of blackness, with scores of baleful eyes glowing in it. It was seeking the door to the cellar, and when it found it, it vanished therein, and I felt the floor of this lower room giving as that of the upper chamber had done, and once a crashing above had been followed by the fall past the west window of something which must have been the cupola. Now liberated from the instant from the wreckage, I rushed through the hall to the front door, and finding myself unable to open it, seized the chair and broke a window, climbing frenziedly out upon the unkept lawn where moonlight danced over yard-high grass and weeds. The wall was high, and all the gates were locked. By moving a pile of boxes in a corner, I managed to gain the top and climb to the great stone urn set there. About me, in my exhaustion, I could see only strange walls and windows and old grumble roofs. The steep street of my approach was nowhere visible, and the little I did see succumbed rapidly to a mist that rolled in from the river despite the glaring moonlight. Suddenly, the urn to which I clung began to tremble, as if sharing my own lethal dizziness, and in another instant my body was plunging downward to I knew not what fate. The man who found me said that I must have crawled a long way despite my broken bones, where a trail of blood stretched off as far as he dared to look. The gathering rain soon effaced this link with the scene of my ordeal, and reports could state no more than that I had appeared from a place unknown, at the entrance of a little black cart of Paris Street. I never sought to return to those tenebrous labyrinths, nor would I direct any sane man thither if I could. Of who or what that ancient creature was, I have no idea, but I repeat that the city is dead and full of unsuspected horrors. Whether he has gone, I do not know, but I have gone home to the pure New England lanes, up which fragrant sea wind swept at everything at evening. Hello Tobats, welcome. Excellent, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Gang, how are you? That was the last story for tonight, I believe. I think I have read enough spooky stuff for tonight. What do you guys say? Let me also beep. Also, I'm very sorry to Pats and Excel, you just came at the end of the stream. I am extra tired today due to the heat and because I had guests, so I was about to raid someone and go to bed. So well written, so many higher up words and a lot of interesting language, but it takes forever to get to the point. Yeah, Lovecraft though, is all about the suspense. That's why I love it. Like, his stories are amazing because they're interesting and they leave a lot of things up to your imagination too, which is great. I have a lot of imagination myself. Okay, let me see who can we raid tonight. Oh, thank you for the follow, Dr. Fafam. Welcome. I'm very sorry again for those of you that came right at the end of the stream, but I am super tired. I didn't think I would be able to actually finish the story because I was like falling asleep. Stito, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Gang. Okay, so do you want me to raid another ASMR streamer, or do you guys have suggestions on who to raid? Please let me know. Oh, Nexusukyo, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the Vampire Gang. Hello. I'm very sorry again, guys. It just came at the end of the stream. Okay, dang, I don't know who to raid. Suggestions? If not, I'll just pick one of my siblings. Can raid Jinxie. To stream for tomorrow? I think it depends honestly on when my boyfriend goes to sleep, because tomorrow is not Saturday. Yeah, I'll see if I can stream. I think, yeah. Think there shouldn't be problems. Okay, let's raid. Yeah, we'll raid Jinxie. She's a cutie. Okay, a little warning before reading. She's not streaming ASMR, so make sure to lower your volume so you don't risk of like hearing a super loud noise. Okay? Okay, so here's the raid message that you can copy and paste. Here's a link to my Discord server if you want to join, and here are my socials. Oh, also, if you want to help me a little bit, like finance, like I wanted to buy a 3D basically for future ASMR streams, but it cost a lot. So like I've set a crowdfunding on Throne. So if you want to contribute to the microphone, I'll be saving some money, and when I'll be able to buy it, we'll have the cool microphone with the ears. And meanwhile, it's there if you want to like help me out a little bit. But for now, we'll use the Blue Yeti, which works super fine. And guys, thank you so much for coming tonight. I hope you will sleep well and have very good dreams and very good sleep. I love you. Thank you so much for coming. See you next time. Bye 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 bye.